waitress shamed by customers, they freeze. When her billionaire husband walks in beneath the flickering neon of a humble all-night diner, where the air hangs thick with the scent of coffee and fried comfort, a queen walks unrecognized. Her crown is a flour-dusted apron, her scepter a coffee pot. Elara serves midnight meals to souls hungry for more than just food, her quiet strength a shield against the world's casual cruelties. But when venomous patrons mistake her humility for weakness, they learn a harsh truth. True power doesn't always announce itself with flashy cars or tailored suits. Sometimes it arrives in muddy boots, carrying a love fierce enough to shatter arrogance with a single glance. This is a tale of cosmic justice, served not cold, but piping hot. Elara's eyes were filled with tiredness, and the fluorescent lights of Mel's midnight diner hummed a melody that was monotonous and worn out, and reflected that. Her notepad was loaded with the typical mayhem that occurs on Friday nights: double bacon, hold the tomato, patty melt extra crispy, coffee with cream, real cream, not that powder. Her apron was covered in flour, and her sensible shoes made a slight squeaking sound on the worn linoleum. Table 6, on the other hand, was a whole other kind of mayhem. A group of 4 professionals who were perfectly dressed and had the smug certainty of a transaction that had been finalized had been a source of frustration for her ever since they arrived. Marcus, the head of the ring, had returned his artisanal burger twice, the first time for being slightly over pink, and the second time for being lifelessly gray. Marcus's Rolex undoubtedly cost more than Elara's monthly rent. It was clear that his friends, Chloe, Derek, and Bianca, shared his scorn, as shown by their shrill and brittle laughing. "Honestly," Chloe muttered as she shook her imported sparkling water, which was pricey and had been replenished twice. "Do they even teach temperature control in whatever certificate program you people do?" With a hazy motion, she pointed toward Elara. A leisurely breath was taken by Elara, and the aroma of frying onions and old coffee filled her lungs as she inhaled deeply. Her grip was solid as she held a pot of freshly brewed coffee in her palm. "I express my regret that the burger did not meet your expectations, sir. Could I kindly give you a salad? Our cob is in a really fresh state," Marcus snorted once. "What about a salad? Following that heinous act? I could not possibly put my faith in this kitchen to properly wash lettuce, my darling." He leaned back and took a look at her already worn outfit. "You know, someone with your demeanor," she said, "really belongs in a less prominent location, with lofty goals. Perhaps it's a truck stop? Reduce the amount of pressure to accomplish things properly." He laughed out loud. "Is it possible that she is putting money down for community college? Strive for something more than fry cook?" While hiding behind a hand that was well-groomed, Bianca restrained a chuckle. Elara's cheeks began to radiate heat, but it wasn't only humiliation that was causing it. Unwarranted condescension had a tinge that was both familiar and harsh to the taste. It had happened to her before, but it had never been quite so brazenly nasty. It was not to apologize once again that she opened her lips. Rather, it was to provide a rejoinder that was strong and quiet about respect. Just as she was about to speak, the bell of the restaurant began to ring with an unexpectedly strong power. The smell of rain and costly leather was carried in by a gust of chilly night air that rushed in from the distance. There was a brief pause in the conversation at the table's close as everyone turned their attention. When he entered the room, the guy seemed to displace the very air that was already there. He wore well-worn, robust hiking boots, black pants, and a thick cable-knit sweater underneath a waxed jacket that was covered with dried dirt. He was not extravagant in his appearance. He had a little beard on his chin, and his brown hair was disheveled over his head. In spite of this, he had an obvious air of restrained strength, which was reminiscent of the tranquility of deep water and the peaceful assurance of someone who was completely safe. Elara was the first thing that his keen and clever eyes landed on as they swept the room, avoiding the chrome and neon in the process. A genuine and loving grin softened his face, utterly converting him into a different person. There is no sound. It wasn't simply table 6 that became ice cold. It seemed as if the whole diner was holding its breath. A pause was made by the fry cook in scraping the grill. During the middle of their milkshakes, the couple who were standing at the counter halted. Considering that this individual was identifiable, despite the fact that he was dressed casually and covered. This is Silas Thorne. This is a tech giant, a generous person, becoming one of the youngest millionaires on the globe by their own efforts. Forbes, not restaurant walls, featured his face as a feature. Elara's own grin blossomed in response, bright and genuine, eliminating the exhaustion that had been there. It's Silas! Achieved success! Just how was the location? While Silas approached her, he paid no attention to anybody else's sight. He maneuvered around table 6 as if it were a coat rack that was put in an uncomfortable location. His voice was a rich, resonant baritone that traveled smoothly in the sudden silence. He continued, "Long drive, but worth it." And his voice carried effortlessly. His stance was protective rather than dominant, despite the fact that he halted alongside her and dwarfed her form entirely. He lifted the heavy coffee pot from her hand with care, his fingers lightly brushing against hers as he did so. When I was coming back from the mountains, the traffic was terrible. This is a message of love from the foundation team. Thanks to the materials shipment that you coordinated at the very last minute, the new roof of the school has finally been installed. Without any awareness of the seismic shock waves that were reverberating throughout the room, he lowered himself to his knees and planted a gentle kiss on her temple. "It seems that you are worn out, my dear." Rough shift, huh? The aggregate appearance of table 6 became a shade of grayish white. Instantaneously, Marcus's Rolex felt like a lead weight was being placed on his wrist. The glass of sparkling water that Chloe was holding shook in her palm. His appearance suggested that Derek may be ill. It seemed as if Bianca was seeing the violation of a basic rule of physics as she watched with wide eyes. For a fleeting minute, Elara leaned against Silas, gathering strength from his presence. This moment was focused on anchoring herself. Her posture was straight, and her gaze was clear and steady as she switched her attention back to table 6. No gloating could be seen in her eyes. Rather, she exuded a deep and unassuming dignity. "Silas, I am just about to wrap up my time with these visitors. The only thing they were doing was providing some career advice." At long last, Silas Thorne's attention began to drift to table 6. It was not outraged. Rather, it was evaluating. This guy has the appearance of someone who established empires by seeing through facade. He is cool and analytical. It rushed over their fine clothing, their dinners that were only partially consumed, and their looks of sudden fear that were stuck in place. One word was all that was required of him. A crushing force was exerted upon them as they became aware of the person whom they had just spent the previous 20 minutes ridiculing. The weight of his attention was so heavy that it was quiet. A stifled croak was Marcus's voice when he finally found it. "It is Mr. Thorne." "Oh, sir." Unbeknownst to us, of course. All of us were just. "Leaving?" The tone that Silas used to finish for him was deceptively kind, yet it had the finality of a vault door shutting. "It is true. My guess is that you were." It was not a loud voice that he used. He had no reason to do so. It was a dismissal that was as final as a decree that had been signed. They were in a hurry. Chairs were scuffed and scratched. An attempt was made to open wallets. With trembling hands, Derek tossed down a mound of cash, which was far more than what was necessary to pay the debt. Chloe was unable to look into anyone's eyes. While Bianca was in such a hurry, she almost fell down. Marcus murmured yet another unintelligible apology, his face flushed with anger, before vanishing as quickly as possible for the exit. The sound of the bell ringing as they ran away was like the sound of a death knell calling out to their pride. Immediately after the door was shut, there was a collective stillness that was almost respectful that lingered in the cafe for a while longer. There was then a quiet murmur of talk that began, which was tinged with amazement and laughing that was repressed. Silas switched his attention back to Elara, and the cold evaluation melted away into a warm concern almost immediately. Advice on a career path? Who is it from? When he laughed, it was a deep and rich sound. My sweetheart, while you sleep, you manage the logistics for half of my humanitarian initiatives that span over 3 different time zones. It would be possible for you to acquire and sell their whole company before breakfast. The remaining tension was broken by Elara's laughter, which was a sound that was both clear and real. She took the discarded cash in her hands, counted it with a graceful efficiency, and then slipped it into her apron. They paid for their lunch, and then some more than that. There is a gratuity. As she looked into Silas's eyes, she felt a spark of her previous fervor resurface. Also, in all candor, this is a good place for me. Assisting Mel was necessary. Regulars are the most regular people in the world. It is satisfying to earn my keep, Silas, and even if it means having to cope with the odd snobbish person with a silver spoon. With a smile on his face, Silas hugged her once again, completely oblivious to the flour that was on her apron or the mud that was on his jacket. His voice was rich with pride and compassion as he said, "And that," referring to the unshakable steel spine that lay under the flour dust. That right there is the quality that is worth $1 billion. Currently, he cast his gaze in the direction of the counter and said, "How about some of Mel's famous peach pie? Moreover, please fill me in on everything else that had on tonight. Avoid leaving anything out." It was a wink. "Especially the satisfying parts." As Elara took him to a seat that was relatively quiet, the restaurant began to hum with a new intensity. It was already being recounted again, but this time in a more quiet and enthusiastic tone. The humiliated waitress was not only justified, but she was also shown to be a queen who was walking among them without being recognized. She chose to serve food not out of need, but rather out of courage and character. As a result, the lesson reverberated more loudly than any door that was slammed shut. Genuine value is just as well dressed in an apron as Armani, and dignity once acquired is a stronghold that cannot be broken by petty contempt. As a result of the afterglow of the delectable and well-deserved cosmic justice, the aroma of peach pie suddenly appeared to give out a sweeter perfume, and the fluorescent lights seemed to become somewhat warmer.